Hey, LaMonica, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, I'm glad to have you here. I'm excited to talk about the Terminalist Dark Wolf. Episode 4 just dropped today out of 7. You were featured in the first two. Man, we're going to dive into that, but I kind of wanted to, kind of give a little bit of background to listeners. You had a very prestigious athletic career, played college football, you had some NFL tryouts, and then you kind of ended up moving into the acting world. But there was a quote that I heard where you said you wanted to maybe do a professional football for like 6 or 7 years and then move into acting. And I was kind of curious, when did that acting bug, hit you? And when did you kind of start working on that craft? And then, we'll kind of thread the needle from there to what you got going on these days.
Yeah, I grew up, I mean, I watched tons of television growing up and I got influenced by stuff I saw, films I saw helped shape me, but you don't really know how to get into acting. Like I grew up in San Francisco in the early part of my years, and we don't see actors out there. I never saw them, but I played football as well. And what I did see, we grew up right behind Candlestick Park, what used to be Candlestick Park, and I saw Jerry Rice. I saw Joe Montana and Ronnie Lott and Ray Wershing and Like I see all these guys that seemed attainable to me, like they're right there in front of me. So I pursued football, but I always had in the back of my head, like I would do plays growing up. I wasn't really in the drama, department at school, but it was just, I love playing Pictionary and just like, I love that part of being creative. And when football was over, I was like, you know what? That's always been my plan B. I was going to play football for a little while, then transition. And the transition just came a little faster, and I moved out to Hollywood, and slowly but surely, figured it out.
Well, I was curious too, because there was something that kind of mixed a little bit of both worlds there, and that was your time playing SlamBall, which is, if anyone hasn't seen it, you need to go do a YouTube search with your name and SlamBall. What an epic event, man. It's so much fun. But I was curious how you got into that, and then maybe we can talk about, how that ended up getting a little character arc there in One Tree Hill and how that came to be.
Yeah, that's how it started, man. I was me and a friend of mine were in acting class, and we got word like there's a new TV show coming out called SlamBall, and we thought it was a scripted, new drama or something. We're like, sports, we did that, athletics, we can use that to kind of maybe help get a part on this show. So me and him, my buddy Pat, we went down to the convention center in Los Angeles, and we're in a room full of like 300 or 400 dudes, and we're like looking around. They're pretty much telling you what this new sport is, and we're like, this isn't a TV show. Like this is a new sport they're trying to get up off the ground. And we're like, okay. We still had that. I had that competitive bug in me still, from playing. It was like fresh off of football. So I'm like, yeah, like I could put acting on hold a little bit and see what this SlamBall thing does. It looked fun. So we, you go up there, you interview, and they're like, yeah, come to this location downtown. We're going to try people out. I tried out for it. And each day, if you didn't hear your number call, everyone had these numbers on their chest, then come back tomorrow. And it went all the way down like that. And I ended up, making a team. I ended up being an all-star. Like the last season I played, I led the league in scoring. It was a fun experience. We saw the world. We traveled to Europe, China. Like we did all these things, went all these places, and it was still a brotherhood, like that locker room energy that I missed from football. We had that. And funny enough, SlamBall was there was a show called One Tree Hill where they're going to have a 2 or 3 episode arc, and they wanted SlamBall to be embedded in it. So they were going to audition an actor and teach him to play SlamBall to be the antagonist to to James Lafferty and Joe Manganiello. And I'm like, no. This
That's
is
me.
yeah, this is me. This is tailor made for why I came here. And I, convinced the guys like the higher ups to let me audition for it. They let me audition. I got the part, went down to Wilmington, North Carolina, filmed it, and being on set and just with the cameras, the other actors, the energy, it reminded me of why I came back to Los Angeles in the first place. And I'm like, I told the SlamBall higher ups, like, I think this is it for me. And that was years later. That was maybe 5 or 6 years after, we had been playing. So I'm like, I think I'm done, guys. Like, I went back home. I got into 2 more acting classes, and it's just been nonstop. And that's oddly what gave me my first credits in television was, you know, going this route. There's never a perfect way. Like the season of yes, you roll with the flow and you know, positive things happen for you.
Well, and I want to get into that idea of like manifestation and visualization because you've talked about that before in some other interviews. But one of the things, you know, I kind of wanted to touch back on, you kind of mentioned that brotherhood, and that's, you know, your time there with all the family there with the Terminalist series, right? I mean, you were in the original Terminalist series, and then, you know, that would probably be it for you there. And then all of a sudden you get a phone call at some point in time saying that, hey, these guys are going to do the prequel. Jack Carr had 7 books in the series, and The Dark Wolf was never one of those. But that kind of manifested in, and then all of a sudden, your character is invited back in. You're invited back in. Take me back to that day where you get the phone call and you hear about this, because I'm sure that was at some point it was out of left field until it was more developed and you were a part of it. What was that like when you first got that call?
It was it was humbling. Anytime you're called back from people that you worked with before, it's a good feeling. That means you did a good job for one. They like your work. They like being around you. And lately, a lot of that is like character. You know, we want good character people here. So it just feels good all around. But when your character dies, your acting character dies on a show, you think that's it, you know, and that's what it is. And they did a prequel, and they told me that originally this commander wasn't going to be Commander Cox. It was just another role, like just another commander that happened to be on the base. But DeGilio and Jared Shaw and Max Adams and those guys, they were like, we could bring LaMonica back for this. I don't know if he's available, but do you think he'd do it? And I'm like, this is like leading in. We're right about to go to season 2 of Shooting Lioness.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like there was a small window, and there's been jobs that have come around that I've had to say no to because it bleeds into, you know, Lioness has the priority of my time. So if it messes with that, if it interferes at all, I can't do it. And I've had to say no to other projects. But this one, there was a small window where they called Paramount, and Paramount was like, yeah, you got him. You know, right when he's done, he has to come here to Texas, and we'll figure it out. So we got all that settled, and it was just like being around those guys again. And a lot of like Jared Shaw, Ray Mendoza, they came on Lioness to work with us too. So it was real familiar. Justin Garza, all these guys, like we've been interacting between productions for a while, so they feel like family anyway. So when I was out there in Budapest with Jared and those guys, I'm taking pictures, sending from Terminalist, sending them to our group chat on Lioness, like, hey, y'all, Jared said, what up, you know, and it was just, it was nice to, you know, to be wanted for one. But when you see the material for these 2 episodes that Commander Cox has, and it was like, they sent it to me, he's like, hey, would you want to do this? And I'm reading it and I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'm like, when and where, like, this is nice, meaty stuff. So yeah, that whole thing, it fit perfectly, and that usually doesn't happen. But whenever those guys call, and they know that, like, I'm game. I'm game.
Well, and that I was, you know, curious as far as like, you know, that idea of what that was like to be back with that family, because you know you have a few different families and pockets of folk that you work with, but there's something that's special. When I've talked to Jack, you know, I've seen all these other interviews with Chris and Taylor, and everyone talks about that brotherhood that's there that kind of has a very feel like that's, you know, that military vibe, man. And I was kind of curious what that's like for you and what that feeling is like on set, and, you know, all the veterans that are there and, you know, the different folks in the agency. What was that like for you? And if you can maybe expand on that a little bit.
There's some shows, well, I do a good amount of service people, like servicemen, military, in the past as well. And some shows might have 1 or 2 guys that are like a Marine on set, or you know, a Navy SEAL guy that's on set. Like you could ask questions from, you know, like my character, would this happen, or how would he approach this? How would he, you know, interact with you know, his guys if he's a commander, whatever. Terminalist, everybody. Like you could throw a rock and hit 9 or 10 people that could give you all the feedback you need. All these guys have been there and done it. So it was just an embarrassment of riches of, you know, of brains you could analyze and talk to, you know, to help your character out. So that was one. And 2, we have fun when we're filming. Like, we mix it up. In Budapest, we were like, we'd be rehearsing, we'd work some here and there, and we'd go hit the bars. Like, yeah, it's a good team, good environment, and yeah, there's no lack of fun had when we're not working. So, and it's a bunch of Navy SEAL guys that before that we were on Lioness season 1 together. So we're in Budapest now. Like, okay, I hope they're ready for what's about to happen.
Well, I heard that there was some really competitive paddle games. Did you get in on that? Any of those?
No, not the paddle games.
See, they were
No,
too afraid to have you on. They knew what was going to happen.
yeah, my reputation probably preceded me, but no, I've never paddled before in my life. And the thing was, when we got to Budapest, I was there for maybe 3 or 4 weeks in the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So, people still getting situated. Like Taylor Kitsch said, when he first got there, he was jet lagged. Like, it was slow to build the snowball. But when it got going, it was a well-oiled machine. But we hit, like, hanging out wise, we hit the ground running.
Nice. Well, let's for those who haven't tuned in to the series yet, obviously Terminalist Dark Wolf, the prequel, kind of Ben Edwards' origin story, played by Taylor Kitsch, and you got a lot of the other cast characters and some that'll be seen in True Believer and different things that are being filmed now. But let's take us back. We're in 2017, Mosul, Iraq. Why don't you just set the stage for what's happening in the series, and maybe tell us about Commander Cox and what your role is there playing him.
Yeah, they're in 2017. There's a terrorist activity. They find out who it is, and it's out now. But yeah, Commander Cox, Agent Fuller, the CIA, they're handling the primaries, that the people that we're supposed to be after. They have a side agenda that's going on with these guys, while our soldiers are like, we need to get rid of these people. This is target number 1. And for Commander Cox and the higher ups. And Commander Cox used to be one of those guys. He used to be with his guys. So he's in a tight spot between the brass up here and his soldiers that he would much rather be out with, hunting. So it puts him in a tight spot. And it all comes to head at the end of episode 1 when the soldiers figure out that we're protecting an asset that we should be going after. And it's just the drama. There was a scene with myself, with Taylor, with Tom Hopper, Luke Hemsworth. We were all there when Taylor's character kind of figured it out, and he just let Commander Cox, he let everybody in that room have it. And there was something in me, in Commander Cox, where I agree with what you're saying. I'm with you, but it was just such a good scene with so much going on, and that was like a breaking point, a transition point for a lot of characters in that room. Something to drive on for the rest of the season.
Well, absolutely. And, can I speak frankly? And then, boy,
Yeah.
that was a whole different world. And then, in episode 2, and there's some spoilers. So if you haven't heard, wait, watch it and then come back. But as far as episode 2, after everything is figured out, you're in a room, you're with the CIA folks, and they're basically saying, hey, we need the trident of him and one other man. And then you have a speech that you have as Commander Cox, which is really just mind blowing, man, because you're going to have to take his bird. You talk about you're stripping his soul, man. I mean, that was an intense, prologue there. I was wondering just like, what was that like for you getting that and like reading that? Because you come from a military family. Your dad's, has the bronze medal. Like you, the Bronze Star. The importance of what it is to have something and to earn it, and then also see that go away. And I was just curious as far as like, what was that like getting ready for that scene for you?
That's one of the scenes I saw in the material they sent me before I agreed to come back. And it means so much on so many different levels in reality and in the context of the script of the characters. I think I saw something where Taylor Kitsch said what was said in that monologue is like gave him the drive for the rest of the season. And there was so much riding on the words being said there. And like, hindsight, looking what Commander Cox in Terminal List 1, where he ended up going, I think it's tragic when you see who he was from back in the day and saying these words, he meant those words. Like those words were embedded in his soul, his fibers. And I think when they heard everything that Commander Cox had to say in that monologue, and they were still like, the ambassador, they agree with my decision, and it's got to be one more. In that moment, I think it started to break up stuff in Commander Cox himself to future-wise from that point on to where you see him pick up in Terminal List 1 down the line. That's where the fracture started for him as well. Yeah. Like maybe these guys, they don't have our back like they should. They don't, what are we doing? I shouldn't be up here I should be with my, there was a lot going on in that moment. But doing that scene, you could hear a church mouse pissing in cotton when we were filming that. And it was like, and Max Adams wrote it, and Max was right there. And I had worked with Fred Toy, the director. We had worked together on Designated Survivor years before. He was our producing director, and we were familiar. So I'm looking around like, Max, like, what else? These are your words. Like, am I doing it? Like, what do you need from me more? He's like, man, you're, nothing. Fred came over, nothing. DeGilio, like all those guys that were like, we did a few more takes of different variations and stuff like that. But for the most part, like just being around all these Navy SEALs, coming from my own family, and just knowing the context of the words that had to do with this script, I had a head start with everything.
Oh, I had to rewind and watch it again. That was so powerful, man. It was just incredible. And it really, I think it did set that tone, and I could tell that fracturing is like, okay, this is tied into what happens later. And, there's no information yet, but there's a lot of timeline between what happened with this origin story and the Terminalist. And there may be something that, I talked to Jack Carr when he was on late, not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, and they're talking about, there's room to grow. There's all sorts of ways this could go. So, hopefully it's not just, the end of our time with Commander Cox, because you're just brilliant in both of those, man. You did a great job, and I really love having you on there. It's great. You mentioned Designated Survivor, and that's when you played Secret Service Agent Mike Ritter, 2016 to 18. And in that, you talked in another interview before about how you went and actually did some interviews with the Secret Service agents there when Obama was there, and talked to them. And, I know in 1883, they had that cowboy camp. And I was curious as far as like for the Terminalist and for Dark Wolf and, even Lioness there too, what kind of training and as far as exposure to that brotherhood and that, military, nature, what was that like for you? What were some of the trainings and the things you did? Because obviously there's a lot on set. You got to be able to hold your weapon right. You got to use it right. Got to have the right lingo and things. What was that training like and on that kind of military side of things? I know you've done many other shows too, but just kind of curious how you got to be so fluid with those types of characters.
It's been, the training has been more so in depth lately, like Terminalist and Lioness, 1883, like the training has, like 1883, it was a month before we started filming. We had cowboy camp, and that kind of, you're learning to ride, you're learning to really get after it, lope, do all this stuff. You're roping, you're doing all the things needed to look believable in this role, but you're also building camaraderie with your castmates. So every day you're waking up at the crack of the sunrise. We're on our horses at 6 a.m. We're riding for 4 or 5 hours. Then we go to the weapons side of it, because you have these old like Winchester rifles that aren't even around anymore. Then you have, then wagon riding training. Like, where are you going to learn to ride a wagon? These uncomfortable, no springs. I hated riding wagons. But with that being said, you're building like just family in that month. You're eating together. Then this was during COVID as well, 1883. So we couldn't leave the ranch. So we're just like we'd do cowboy camp. We'd karaoke at night. We'd have dinner together. Like, it was just a real, team building environment. And it went right into shooting. And as far as weapons training, like Lioness, 2 weeks beforehand, we'd have weapons training, CQB, we'd formations, it was, and the same thing for Terminalist. I wasn't I was a commander in terminalist, so I didn't get to be out there with all the, the running and gunning with the guys. I get that on Lioness, but yeah, they go through the same thing. And you got all these guys like Ray Mendoza, Jared Shaw, season one Lioness. They were the ones with our weapons training, helping us, with all the stuff tactical to make it look believable. And it's been the same. Like now we have other guys from different, backgrounds, but they're all legit, and it's fun, man. It's like, and like you said, going to the White House, when do you as a cast or just in regular society get to go and just experience some of these things? I just saw Virginia Madsen at an event maybe a week or two ago, and she comes up to me. I was talking to a director, and she was like, "Hey, me and him were in the Oval Office together." And I looked back, gave her a hug, like, yeah, like we were. I got to speak to the head of the detail for Obama. There was people that were on our show, like the chief of staff got to speak to the head of chief of staff over that currently in the White House. All of us got to speak to our positions and just get further in depth with the character. And it's just been, it's fun, man. Like that doesn't, none of that gets taken for granted. These are life experiences, but we use them for work.
Well, another one of those too that I wanted to talk about is like the idea of who you played in 1883, right? You're playing Thomas. He's a former slave at 12 years old. His owner's dead. He ends up having a chance of freedom. He takes off. And one of the things that I think it's not portrayed as much, maybe now there's a little bit more knowledge of it, but like 25% of the cowboys were black cowboys. I mean,
Yeah.
my family, it goes way back. We were very good friends. The guy named Bob Lemons, who, you and I talked about at one
Bob
point in
Lemons,
time,
yep.
the original Mustang. All right. There's a book there.
Mustang. Yeah.
And speaking of rifles, we actually have his rifle that he used. Like there's
Amazing.
history with our families that go way back. I'm working on a book now, but all that to say, like, there's such a rich history of black cowboy culture that hasn't been really explored as much. And I was just wondering what that was like for you to be able to portray such a strong character and kind of maybe shine a little light on that and that way of life in that time that I think gets overlooked from especially all the old Westerns, right? It's just not there as much.
Yeah. And especially on television. In film, you have it here and there. My favorite movie ever was Unforgiven. And Morgan Freeman, Ned, like you see it in some older movies, but not many. And in television, it was, I think, Lonesome Dove, like Dietz. That was all that you said. He was great, but it wasn't prominent. So when I'm reading this script, I read the first 2 episodes before I got the part. And I'm just like, wow, man, like even if I don't get it, I can't wait to see this, because this is, whoever gets this is gonna, sky's gonna be the limit. But this is one of those stories that it transcends like just storytelling and television. Like these are people's lives. I can't tell you how many places I've been, especially like during the time it was running and maybe a year or so afterwards. We'd be on vacation and there'd be like, people coming up to me saying thank you, like genuine, heartfelt, tears in their eyes. You're telling my family's story. I grew up in Texas. I grew up a cowboy. We're cowboys. I started doing Bill Pickett rodeos and talking to black cowboys all over, the country. And it's just significant. And when you do the research and you see the impact and whether it's like the technology or the, just creating all these things in the cowboy culture that we use every day. I'm not a cowboy, but I'm an ambassador for it. But talking to those guys, the things you use every day in cowboy culture that were created by these black cowboys back in the 1800s that you've never known. It's just, yeah, there needs to be more stories on it. Taylor Sheridan, like he cracked the glass, and I think it just should be so much more, of these kind of stories told. And I'd love to keep telling them, but there's room for a lot of growth. And, it's awesome to be a part of that culture.
Well, I'm glad that Taylor has done that. And again, there was another amazing role you had there. I know that some of the other prequels had gotten, a second season and stuff. I know that 1883 isn't on the board to do that. And I think that's, it's tough, man, because I just wanted to keep seeing all the, I mean, what an amazing cast. And you've worked with so many amazing actors and actresses. And you just mentioned there too, one of your favorite movies there, Unforgiven, there with Morgan Freeman. I know you're a big fan of Shawshank as well. What was that like to then? I know you guys all had the scenes together, but you got a chance to meet Morgan, and kind of what was that like for a kind of a culmination of getting into the business and then being able to be with one of the people that was kind of a mentor in that sense, right? Of
Yeah,
some of the roles.
he's a legend, man. Like it's Morgan Freeman, and like you said, we don't have scenes together in Lioness. They're in the, the White House part of it, and we're out, in the field. We're filming season one, and I hadn't met him yet. And we were out in Spain, like wrapping up the season, doing some stuff before we headed to Morocco to finish. And I was like, I'm going to meet him one of these days out here. He was staying in the hotel across from the Airbnb that I was staying at. I'm like, I'm going to run into him sooner enough. We're going to figure it out. And I'm sitting around the Airbnb, and I hear, yeah, Morgan's last day is today. I'm like, wait, excuse me? Today is.
Yeah.
I stopped what I was doing. I called production to see if they could. Where we were filming was maybe 45 minutes away from where we were. They had a shuttle come get me. On my day off, I went there and waited like 6-7 hours, like let him do his work. The director knew that I wanted to meet other actors that he's worked with, like Michael Kelly helped facilitate it. And at the end of the day, they brought me over to him, and I met him, and I'm like, hey man, like, he's had a huge influence on me. Like you said, Shawshank, Lean on Me, Unforgiven, Ned. I'm like, dude, like your career. And I got a late start into acting. I didn't start until my like early to mid 30s. He got started later and didn't have his first break. Like I think Shawshank or Driving Miss Daisy, one of them he got when he was like 50 years old. And that's when he started snowballing and just it picked up. So I'm like, you give me hope in all different kind of directions, especially starting late as I did, knowing like you could have a whole career, your second half of life, and do great work. So I met him and I've talked to him since then, season two. But yeah, he's a legend. And I've worked with Sam Elliott's a legend. I've worked with some really amazing people, and I'm grateful. And hopefully it continues to keep tracking.
Well, it indeed. And I remember I was just, when you mentioned Sam Elliott, I think there was a time you were with Tim McGraw and like Tom Hanks came in and was saying like, oh my gosh, I got to meet Sam Elliott. Like the idea of
Yeah.
this legend meeting a legend and how, it's just still like so exciting to meet some of these people who have laid down a path of brilliant careers that we can all be inspired to and enjoy. That was a funny little anecdote I heard.
It was great. It was the makeup trailer. Tom was in the makeup trailer. Him and Tim were buddies before. They're talking, and I heard Tom's like, "Yeah, oh my God, I got to meet Sam Elliott today," and I'm like, "Dude, you're Tom Hanks. Like, what's going on right now?" But there's such a mutual respect for what we all do, and how we're all influenced. Some people could have the ego or the bravado to be like, "Oh yeah, I don't watch this," or "I don't whatever." If you've influenced me, I'm gonna give you your roses. Hey man, I love your work. I do it often. It catches some people off guard. Like there's a tough. I'm a 6'3", 230-pound dude. You think you might have this. I'm walking around like I'm this big tough guy or whatever. But if I see people and I see other actors, whatever energy they're giving off, I'll come over and break it up. Like, hey man, I love your work. I don't want anything else. I just want to let you know, like you're doing good work, and I keep it moving. But
Cool.
there's with a lot of Taylor Sheridan productions, there's that mutual love. Billy Bob, same thing. Everyone just enjoys being together, and it's a mutual respect amongst actors.
Well, it's a great family of folks that you've kind of touched base on and with and working with. I mean, such richness of in characters and just people and who are putting their heart and soul onto the screen for us. What all do you have that's coming up? Tell people a little bit about Osiris. That came out, I think, at the end of July, right?
Yeah, we shot that in New Orleans a couple years ago. Max Martini, Linda Hamilton. That's another one. Working with, like you're telling me, I get to run around a spaceship with guns, and Linda Hamilton's next to me, and it's sci-fi in this genre. Like that was amazing. The director, William Kaufman. That's the first time I met him, but we hit it off, and it was another situation where we're filming the finale of season 2 Lioness, and William Kaufman is already in Bulgaria going into production on this really well-written action film that's just amazing. And the actor that they had, like something happened where he got injured beforehand and they didn't know it until the last minute. And it's an indie project. There's not these huge big budgets to where, oh, we'll go back home and find another actor and we'll shoot it in 5 months. They have this window of 5 weeks where we have to get this done. If you're sick, you got to figure it out and you got to shoot through it. You got to do whatever. So now they're minus the lead actor of the film. You're carrying the whole thing. William Kaufman, the director, hits me up. We're filming the season finale, and I'm in an area on the ranch where we're filming where I'm not getting any phone calls. There's no reception. We're just in a cooling van because it's like 112 degrees in Fort Worth. We're in a cooling van for like 5 minutes, trying to get cool before we got to go back out there. My phone rings, and I'm like, I haven't heard my phone ring all day. And it's the director. He was like, hey, man, we're in a crunch right now. When do you finish Lioness? I'm like, we're done in like the next week or so. I'm sending you this script. I need an answer by the end of the day because the producers want to go out to some big names and this and that. I told them you were, So, okay. So I take my phone with me. I download the script while I have reception. I'm reading it in between scenes while we're filming. And I'm like, I need to do this. Like, this is me. Nobody else. This is me. I was able to send him a text back saying, let's get it done. Call my reps. Like, we'll figure it out. We finished Lioness season 2. And 3 days later, I'm on a plane to Bulgaria. And what was amazing about that trip as well was my wife is Bulgarian and she's from Sofia. So her whole family is still out there. We have a 5-year-old that hasn't met his grandparents yet, hasn't met his uncle, his cousins. We go out there as a whole. We put him in school out there. He's hanging out with his cousins. No one speaks English. He's the only, he's figuring things out, but he's hanging out while I'm working with his aunts, his uncles, his grandparents. It was one of those experiences that, it resonates. It was just one of those life experiences. But we shot that. The movie is called Nightingale. Me and Andrew Howard are the anchors on it with a really, really good cast. Lenz Edwards, Daniel Bernhardt. It's really, really good cast. Navy SEAL, long story short, he ends up on a rescue mission in the middle of the Ukraine and Russia conflict. So just being out there on your own in the middle of everything and chaos that you don't know, you can't understand anything. You just know you have a mission to get your goddaughter out of harm's way. And it's just fun action. It's really touching stories, moments, interacting with Ukrainian people. And we had people like actors from the Ukraine that had left the war. Like there's one scene where we're running from a drone that's exploding and firing at us. And a woman that was in the scene was a Ukrainian actress. And she had a real scar right here on her face. Like, how'd you get that scar? She said, from the drones that are in but the real ones in Ukraine. I'm like, there was a lot of actors and actresses crying, the Ukraine, because it's so close to home. But that's why it means a lot to a lot of people. I can't wait for this movie to come out, and it'll be out in 2026 at some point. Not sure where or when, but yeah, look for it.
Oh, for sure. Well, maybe we can have you back on when that's about to come on and we can chat a little bit more about it. So I know we got time constraints here, but tell me a little bit more. Is there anything else that's coming out that we need to know? Are there any other projects? And also in what's next idea? I mean, you've had a competitive athletic career. You've had an amazing career as an actor. And I know that, it takes a whole career of experiences to be the overnight success, right? I mean, you have put in your 10,000 hours and then some. I was curious about that next step too. Is there something else that you see on the horizon that you're like, I want to do that someday? Because obviously you've had a lot of success in these other realms. What is it that you are looking at? And tell me about some other projects. Just kind of give me the horizon, man. What do we got?
Yeah. One thing I've always had on my bucket list, even when we were in Budapest, filming, I'd be out going to a cafe or something, and I'm just sitting there in this European feel, and I'm just taking it all in. You got the buses, you got the just busyness of Europe. I'm like, this falls into suit, but like one day I want to do like a Jason Bourne type, action film based in Europe. Um, just different settings, different things that you're not really used to seeing, coming from like black actors. Like they said, like black actors don't sell in Europe. That was a thing from back in the day. I think Will Smith and, The Rock has disposed of that myth, but you just haven't seen a lot of it in these certain roles. So I was able to do that later on that last year in Bulgaria. That's exactly what it was. It was that Jason Bourne kind of thing, but more military. I want to do more Westerns. I tell my reps all the time, like, I want to get back on a horse. There's nothing like being on a set out in nature, riding your horse, getting after it. You could feel his lungs in between, like your legs breathing, you're spitting dialogue, you're shooting guns, and it's just like, whether it's too hot or too cold, it doesn't matter. You feel like you're one with nature. And there was someone in my comment section on one of the things I post on social media. They said, "Do you think you're being typecast?" And I remember having this talk with Sam Elliott, and Sam Elliott said, "Oh God, yes, I hope so. I hope I'm being typecast." That just means you're working. And, you might play these military roles and have this military background. Like in 1883, I was a sergeant, in Civil War, this Pinkerton agent, but you're in a Western in the 1800s on a horse. In Osiris, I'm, I was a Marine, but you're on space with Linda Ham, like with these different elements. Just because you're a soldier doesn't mean that this soldier can't, evolve and end up in different situations and circumstances. And I love playing soldiers. I love being, just active while I can. There's going to be a whole part of my career where I'm sitting behind a desk, delegating authority where I can't move around like I used to. So I want to do as much running and gunning and full body acting as I can right now because I'm having so much fun doing it.
Man, well, you do an exceptional job. All the projects you've been a part of, I've been a big fan of. I know a lot of my listeners are too. I'm going to have all the notes of all the different shows we talked about below so people can go check them out in the podcast. But as far as people who want to go ahead and follow your career and follow your socials, why don't you go ahead and give them those where they can, your tag there so they can follow you.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I kept it all contained. It's LaMonica Garrett, all one word, at Instagram, on Facebook, on X, all the Threads, everything. It's just my first and last name all together, lowercase. And yeah, I try to keep. I'm not as good as I should be on socials. When I'm working, I post a ton. When I'm not working, I kind of go silent. Like family life is family life, but work, like I'm the guy on set always pulling the camera up in people's faces and getting behind some behind the scene takeouts, and I'll end up posting that. So it's a fun ride while I'm working if you follow me.
Nice. Well, is there anything else you want to leave as parting words to maybe some of your fans, friends, supporters over the years? Anything you'd like to say before we sign off here?
Man, I've just had a really good village of people supporting me and seeing the growth and seeing the progress. And like you said, it's the overnight, sensation of like, no, like it, I've fallen on my face a ton, and that's how I figured out things don't work. I failed early and often. And I think now I'm starting to see what I can be. And I don't think I've had my breakout yet. I think that's yet to come. So just, yeah, keep following me and we'll see where this thing goes.
Fantastic. Well, Monica, thank you again so much for joining me. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I look forward to having you on again someday.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Cheers, man. You take care.
You too.